Hello, people. It's Monday.
Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, grand risings. Let's see what's new. It's the time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, grand risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton.
Good morning, grand rising to you wonderful people. How are you? It's Monday, the 27th of April, 2026. It's 9 a.m. on the nose. How are you, Rachel? How are you? How are you, drummer Marco, Grand Rising Gang, and Stolly Files? Good morning to you all. There's so many wonderful people. Wakened and Van Man and Katie and Stephen and Ghetto and JB and Louise and Randy and Humphrey and Lenticular and Sleanta. And Lisa, I always get these names wrong. Cosmic, how are you all? And Jeannie, good morning. Good morning. It's wonderful out there. It's very nice and sunny. It's lovely and we're loving it. How are you all? Welcome to the show that knows those who know the truth are not the same as those who love the truth. And we are the latter, kids. We love the truth around here, no matter how uncomfortable it can be. And sometimes it can be extremely uncomfortable. Wake Up is about breaking away from official lying narratives. It's about us examining what is going on from as kind of removed a perspective as possible. I am not funded by big giant corporations or money men or women telling me what to do. No sirree. So what is on today's Wake Up? We will be joined by Heritage Party General Secretary Madeleine Hunt on the evidence trail they didn't want on record. Well, we want to know about that. We definitely want to know about that. We'll also be joined by Alex Smith, aka media hypnotist Jonathan Royle, who was caught up in a Murdoch Mesa Mahmood fake Sheikh sting. He's not happy and he wants it to be appealed. And we'll also be joined by Dr. Gail Young and Louise PUGH. Wales needs a child abuse inquiry, they have told me. Louise was trafficked from her Welsh home all across the UK and at the hands of, well, you're going to find out. She said, I'm not alone. There are others like me and none of the inquiries cover us. We'll also be looking at the trial for the Starmer 3, White House shooting, assisted dying, Epsom, Operation Talla, Letby Arrest, and Virginia Giuffre, Russell Brand, Candace Owens, and more. We'll also look at the High Court judgment of to do with Amy Winehouse that happened last week. And I want to end on when the universe speaks and how to listen. The universe spoke to me on Friday and I listened and I loved it. How are you all? I hope you are all well. Hello, Fazana. I'm good. Everything's good here. Very much so. Right, let's crack on. So the terminally ill adults end of life bill officially failed on Friday. It failed to become law. It ran out of parliamentary time in the House of Lords. It's a private member's bill and the legislation cannot be carried over into the next parliamentary session. It needed to complete all stages before the session ends in late April, early May. And opponents in the Lords tabled more than 1,200 amendments, a record for a backbench bill, but it does require that. It requires proper scrutiny. There has been, thankfully, we're told, a lack of government intervention. Prime Minister Keir Starmer does actually support it, but the government was said to have maintained a neutral stance. Critics include Paralympian Baroness Tanni Gray-Thomas, who argued the bill was unsafe and unworkable, citing tons of holes and insufficient protection for vulnerable or disabled people. So the next steps, well, Labour MP Kim Ledbetter, who introduced the bill, they're going to be looking at restarting this in some way. They're looking at turning to the Parliament Act, where with the Parliament Act, this could allow the bill to pass into law without the Lords' approval if it is passed by the Commons in 2 successive sessions. And of course, what we've seen is Esther Ranson and her Nepo baby Rebecca weeping and wailing, and to whichever Ranson friendly media will have them. There is one last chance. That was the headline, I think, on Friday morning before the sitting. Well, that's over for now, Esther. Yes, it is. And may I say, she is looking remarkably well for somebody who said she was going to be dead 3 years ago. It's a temporary win, though, but it's not over. Oh, no. And throughout, I found myself conflicted because on the one hand, I completely get it. If people with terminal illness want to leave, I get it. I absolutely do. But the problem is we cannot trust it in their hands. As I've said before, we've seen what they did to us during C-19. We cannot trust them to make medical decisions on our behalf. No wonder there were 1,200 tabled amendments by the Lords. Thank goodness for that. And that is the whole point, really, I think, of the Lords, is to act as checks and balances to what's going on in Parliament. And this weekend marked the 1-year anniversary since the death of Virginia Giuffre, the highest profile Epstein and Maxwell victim who was trafficked to Andrew Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew. Giuffre, we were told, died by suicide on the 25th of April, 2025 at her home in Western Australia. And 1 year on, I cannot categorically state this was suicide anymore. I can't. Too much was on the brink of coming out, as we've now seen over the last year. And Fiona Barnett, who was with us, it was a clip from her last week and she was with us the week before, made an interesting comment about whether Virginia Giuffre was already dead when she posted that crash picture earlier on in April last year. And Kirby Summers, who will be with us soon as our clocks sync up and I can do a pre-record, she's another traffic victim. She made a video over the weekend, 1 year later, and the names. I will put the link in the description so you can watch it. And at the weekend, family and friends of Virginia held a vigil on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to honor her legacy. Her brother, Danny Wilson, spoke of her spirit and courage, stating that she would want to be remembered for how she lived rather than how she left the world. And all of this is coinciding with the visit of King Charles to America, and her brother, Virginia's brother, Sky Roberts, has asked for just 10 minutes with the King to show that survivors are real people and to encourage an acknowledgement of the systematic failure that occurred. Good luck with that. He wouldn't even show up at the child abuse inquiry. So I doubt very much that will happen. But it's a funny old world. People do funny old things a lot of the time. And today in court at the Old Bailey Central Criminal Court are 3 men, Petro Pochinok, Roman Lavrinovich, that's better, and Stanislav Karpiak. 2 Ukrainian nationals and a Ukrainian-born Romanian national. They're all charged with conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life. Roman also faces additional separate counts of arson with intent to endanger life. And it all involves the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. It involves a vehicle fire in Kentish Town in May last year, a fire at a property in Islington where Starmer used to live, a fire at Starmer's private home in Kentish Town. All 3 men have pleaded not guilty and remain in custody at HMP Belmarsh. And the trial begins today, as I say. There was a 5th arrest, by the way. There's been additional arrests, 4th and 5th in January 2026. A 19-year-old man from Harlow, Essex, was arrested on conspiracy to commit arson in connection with these same attacks. He was released under investigation. The investigation is led by the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command due to the high-profile nature of the target. And people have said that the court will be closed. I couldn't find evidence of that. It would appear that the gallery is still open, but we shall see. But what is interesting, of course, and somebody left a comment about that, is there's no PMQs this week. Now, Starmer is saying this is obviously because the elections are coming up, local elections are coming up, and this is the prorogation of Parliament. But people are like, wait a second, it's a little bit early, isn't it? What's going on? But you know what? It means that Parliament finishes business on Tuesday, with the formal closing ceremony on Wednesday. I can't help but think that Keir Starmer does not want to answer questions about anything at this moment in time. And with bloody good reason, frankly. If I was him, which of course I would never be, but if I was him, I wouldn't want a PMQs either in a week like this. And Donald Trump, all the world's a stage, kids, as we know. Where do we start on this? Well, approval ratings dropped. He's taken to posting nasty bile about podcasters on his Truth Social platform. Most sane people have realized that his apparent assassinations were staged, including the one this weekend. What is a quickly deteriorating narcissist to do? He's taken a lot of criticism for building a new White House ballroom. Here he is after the so-called assassination attempt. Here they all are. Don't they look absolutely joyous? He and his cabinet and his press secretary and his wife, quote unquote. So the official narrative runs like this. On the evening of April the 25th, 2026, a shooting occurred during the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton Hotel. Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump were quickly evacuated and were unharmed. Should we watch a little bit of a video where Trump actually falls? Watch this. Boy, oh boy, you know how he always used to go on about sleepy Joe Biden? He can barely stand on his feet these days. Not Joe Biden, I'm sure he can't either. But Donald Trump is an absolute mess anyway. So what we were told was Secret Service were immediately on it. And the person responsible is this guy, Cole Thomas Allen. Apparently had a makeshift shotgun, not an automatic rifle, by the way. Shots were fired. Turns out that it was the Secret Service shots as well. And this is really interesting stuff, right? Anybody seen this? Cole Allen. This was a tweet that was apparently posted on the 22nd of December, 2023. It's the only tweet on an account with the name of Henry Martinez. Very weird stuff indeed. The image was created more than a year before the so-called Trump assassination attempt in Butler. And some people are saying, well, is it possible that seeing as X is run by Elon Musk, he could have inserted it and backdated it? Of course, that's possible. We also heard that Henry Martinez worked at NASA with Cole Allen. And is it likely that he knew he was chosen for something? And so he was giving people a heads up rather. But there's weird stuff as well. Did anybody see his banner? Let me show you this. Now, this could be insane and nuts and all those things, but I'm going to show you anyway. Just check out his banner. Is that possible? Is that possible? And by the way, that picture is called Time Travel. And the caption, thanks the Time Machine team. And so Allen is reported to be an independent game developer and a former teacher. He was staying at the Washington Hilton as a guest at the time of the shooting. He now faces federal counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence and assaulting a federal officer with a dangerous weapon. And as you can see, following the shooting, quote unquote, they were all smiles. And in part, Trump used this event with this press conference straight after. When there's such a shooting, people generally don't have immediate press conferences to then push why they need to keep on spending a heap of money on a new ballroom. And he's now saying, the security services have been saying this forever. We need that new ballroom now. And also, it's really interesting because last week, the most recent mother of one of Elon Musk's children, Ashley St. Clair, talked about how there is a group where as soon as anything happens, they all get assigned to repeat the same message. And they all did, actually. It's really interesting, including Wall Street Mav, Meghan McCain, Dustin Grange, Sean Farash, Randy Fine, Cernovich, Andrew Colvert. And they all said the same thing, essentially, and that is tonight is one more reason for the new White House Trump ballroom. And according to, as I say, Elon Musk's most recent baby mother, that is the information that is sent out to them. that they are then to tweet in unison. I also found the Fox News report very interesting. Have a listen to this.
Tell you, I was sitting next to Caroline Levitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me, and right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened, and then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV, you do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was just very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some...
And it's cut out. Hold on a second.
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there. And this happens, by the way, especially when you have so many people attempting to utilize the same cell service at the same time.
So that is interesting. I believe that she was actually informing them of a false flag. That is Aisha Hasni. She works for Fox. Fox, of course, is absolutely pro-Trump. She then went on X/Twitter to say our calls were dropping because there is barely any service in that ballroom. That's not what she was saying. She was saying that Caroline Levitt, Trump's press secretary, Caroline Levitt's husband, was essentially saying that this was a false flag. That was what was going on. And yes, Erica Kirk was there, and we were shown her crying, saying, I want to go home. And there were lots of tweets saying she finally wants to go home after her circus of a promotional tour. People can be very cutting sometimes. And let me just see if my first guest is here. I'm sure she'll be here any minute. I will welcome her in when she arrives. And just to say, fake tears, smiling later. Yes. Erica, the drama queen. People aren't impressed with Erica Kirk. It has to be said. And of course, I think it's tomorrow. There's a Candace Owens court hearing, Macron versus Candace Owens defamation case set for tomorrow in Delaware Supreme Court. It's interesting. I think they're trying to get it thrown out. The background to the case is the lawsuit was filed in July 2025, and it stems from a relentless and unjustified smear campaign, claim the Macrons, where Owens claims that Brigitte Macron was born male, and the Macrons are seeking substantial damages for a campaign of global humiliation. And it's going to be interesting to see what impact this is going to have on content creators. And Trump has come out batting for Brigitte Macron in a truly awful, lower than low attack on Candace Owens. Really repugnant stuff that he's been posting. And he posts this image of her with a lot of defamation about how she uses white rich men and all this sort of stuff. But the reality is all Trump's main supporters have apparently turned on him. That includes Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. But the tweet he made of Candace Owens reveals his true narc personality. This is outrageous that the so-called president of the United States is tweeting the stuff that he is. He did a mock-up of a Time cover, Vile Person of the Year. And that is in stark contrast to the tweet that he tweeted in 2018 when she was in his court, when he tweeted, Candace Owens of Turning Point USA is having a big impact on politics in our country. She represents an ever-expanding group of very smart thinkers. That's what he thought about her when she was backing him. And when she wasn't, suddenly he starts putting up old pictures of her from an old court case. So we shall see what is going to happen there. It's going to be interesting. And I'm absolutely certain that this will impact on content creators. We shall see. How are you all in the chat? And I am joined by my first guest. So shall we go to her? Without further ado, we've got so much to cover today, including what the hell was going on in Epsom and how I am sick and tired of plastic performative patriots. Sick and tired of them. They're a danger, absolute danger. Right, let us welcome in Madeleine. Here she is. Good morning, Madeleine. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here in your wonderful program.
Thank you, Madeleine. I very much appreciate that. You are Madeleine Hunt. You are, of course, the General Secretary of the Heritage Party with David Curtin. I've talked to David a number of times. I even said to you yesterday, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what the Heritage Party stand for, but I do respect David Curtin because he is a man of principle and he walks the talk, which is unlike so many other politicians. But you're not here to talk about David Curtin, but you are here to talk about something that is also featured in the Light magazine. And if I haven't already, I'll put a link in the description as well as on your Substack. And it has that incredibly curious title, your Substack, of the evidence trail they didn't want on the record. Well, as a journalist, I was like, wait, what is this? What's this about? Madeleine, can you tell us, what does that title relate to?
It means exactly what it is. We kept so many evidence over the years. So that's something what they definitely didn't want us to have. And that was very hard work, because we try, mostly people who are in the party, but over the time the circle expands. We start working with people from outside the party, and we start building some kind of database for evidence. And this starts from practically 2022. And going back to the coronavirus, which actually was another very complicated thing, and people didn't really know when the power started, how this really happened, what was there behind, because everyone was just focusing on the main news. But meanwhile, it was just digging and digging and digging. Who is actually responsible for making the decision in the first place? Decision about the lockdown, decision about any kind of new regulations, any kind of restriction. So over the time, we decide to ask questions. So simply was sending question to the council, going to the council meetings, and ask them always the same question for every single decision they make. Who authorized you to do it? What actually is the legal base for you to decide that we're going to build houses? What is the legal base to decide that you're going to make some driving restriction around speeding limit, and practically everything else what we struggle with? So over the time, it came that there is none. There is actually, in most of these cases, is.
So we're talking obviously about English councils, and it's the lack of accountability. But you know, some of the intro is so curious that what you write, that I feel forced to quote it. And it says, while Parliament debates local consent and councils talk about only hope, a quieter manoeuvre is unfolding. Structural change is being used to shift liability and dilute accountability. And that is obviously of great concern to many of us, because we've seen how there has been the shifting of accountability, particularly in councils. And I think part of your piece is a clip from The Guardian about local governments, and about how just 1% of English councils published audited accounts by deadline. Now, I've had my own problems with trying to gather information from English councils. What were your issues with it? What were your problems that you faced?
I was going to get to this, because I always struggle to explain this, because, to understand what's going on, we really need to know the history of the whole agenda. And that will be very, very boring. If I try to explain everything, people will fall asleep after 1 minute. Because this is just number and regulations and everything else. I want to add that the reason why I am so curious about this, and why I was pushing everyone to look in the direction of papers, the small print, because that's exactly what the government rely on, that people go for the headline, they never read the small print. And the small print are the regulations. So I was getting to the point why we had these changes. This is all under the agenda, which is the local government reorganization. This is the famous devolution. This is the famous Tony Blair reform, which is the continuity from 1997 on. And they've been building this. And the question what we've been asking the council, that was based on their own agenda, because we know where they're going. So we are in the position now. And as you said, only 1% of council provide the audit. That was a few years ago, and nothing changed. So now it's a massive issue. So they practically restructuring the system to just get rid of the holes, of the black holes. So now, let's forget everything and start again. But that's not the only reason. But they think that all these debts will be forgotten, all these black holes will be forgotten. Nobody is going to be responsible for what was spent. So that's where our questions came.
That just clicked off for me. Hello.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it just clicked off. and the thing is that they give us lots of nice buzzwords, don't they? Like locally led. That sounds lovely and cozy, Madeleine. What is the problem with that?
So what they're trying to do, I can summarize this again, the system what they're introducing, the Great Reset, the big agenda, it's based on the same kind of structure like the EU. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to just completely split us in some London-like authorities. And then we're going to have a one person making decision, just one person, mayor or the leader. And we're not going to have any possibility to challenge anyone anymore. They're going to build, they're already doing this illegally, unlawfully. I can't say illegally word, but I can say without of legal footing.
Right.
So they actually building this kind of community boards, people who apparently represent the people voices. But we have to remember, when they just make this authority, this become millions of people under one person. So
right.
That's what they're trying to do.
That's what they mean by locally led. So that sounds very totalitarian, actually. And actually, given your background, you grew up, didn't you, in communist Poland? You understand, don't you, about all of this?
I understand this completely. And the locally led is the biggest lie, and which they use to push the agenda forward. So let's go back. Let's summarize this again. Just go forward. Go back to the election which was cancelled last year. That was a big step, because that was the first time when they just went really forward without any kind of legal footing, as I said. And they called the secondary legislation, which I questioned the minister why you use the secondary legislation on what base. Because, secondary legislation to cancel election could be used in the specific circumstances. And if he want to use the secondary legislation, he still need to have some kind of justification. So if the councils decide, because that was like an invitation to cancel, so that was council decision, not the minister's decision. It's the same with the local government organization. So when the council decide to ask minister, can we have the election to be postponed, the council have the obligation to actually ask people if they want to postpone the election. So that's supposed to come from us. Apparently, following their steps, their explanation, apparently the postponement of the election came from us. So apparently the changes in the system came from us, because it's a people-led. So everything what they implemented is coming from us, because everything is implemented on council request. That was only invitation, and each council requests the changes. So that's the big difference, what people don't really understand. Minister didn't have any power to just told us all to postpone election, or to actually decide, you know what, you're going to have a different authority, not because I am deciding this. So up to now, everything what was implemented was apparently coming from us. We asked for it. That's what they're introducing this.
So they're hiding a great deal of information, aren't they, under these banners, aren't they? Locally led information coming from us. And you've done the hard work, as we say in journalism. You followed the trail, which is fantastic work that you're doing. You're also you're interested in pursuing a resident-led legal action. What is happening today?
It's a massive day. I have to actually just add, because it's one important thing.
Sure.
Famous 130 million pounds, because we'll be talking about audit, which under the pressure, we issued the I don't know, people don't really know who is 151 officer in the council. That's the person who is responsible for the finances and for a legal decision of the council. So we issued these officers with notice. And we've been actually doing this on a regular basis. And surprisingly, after this pressure, the government came with this big news, and have to admit that they was wrong. They have a 113 million systematic error in the financial base. And that was after the councils already spent the millions on consultancy about the local government organization. So then they told the council, whoops, sorry, we don't have the money. So they spent the taxpayer money already, and they admit this in our documentation, because that's what we asked for. And then they said, we don't have the money, so now we have to just do something about this. So that's a very important thing. So they are desperate to push this forward, because if they don't, everything is just falling apart, and people will be taking to the account because people's money was spent. The demolition around us is visible. The developments, that's another very serious issue, because housing crisis, that's something what doesn't exist. They actually use, in some councils, they use emergency to actually put the local government reorganization forward. Emergency money, which again doesn't have any legal footing to do it. We have all admitted on the papers. So today is a big day because the bill is just in the ping pong state. And we had the bill in the Common, we had the bill in the Lords, we've been in touch with the Lords, we've been in touch with the Common, we've been in touch with the national auditors, we've been in touch with everyone. And we just decide that's time actually to just show you that we know what you're doing. We have this documented. So we sent all this evidence, what we have, and the contradictions when they saying that that's council said, that government said. And the biggest thing, what we actually proved, is the government is saying all these things, all the election cancellation, all the local government reorganization, which include developments, 5G, everything what you're fighting against is under this program. So we said the government is saying this on papers several times, even a week ago, is still confirming that it's a voluntary program, that is a people-led program. People ask for that, council asked for that. The government have the hands clean. They didn't do anything because they can't. So meanwhile, the councils mislead their own councillors because that mainly was a cabinet decisions. And they was introducing this in the councils and to the people as something like, the government told us to do it. The government is expecting us to do it. This is mandatory, statutory invitation. When I ask for a legal footing, and that is funny thing actually, because we ask the same question to every single council cabinet, and we ask, provide us the law, quote us the law, what you base on, what is the legal footing for your decisions. So the answer was, we're going to send this to the Freedom of Information Act. And was, hold on, you make decision and you don't even know if that was legal. So how does it work? How does this work?
So they're all working in lockstep, essentially. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Yes. But we have all this proven. So what is happening today, when it went to the Lords, the bill went to the Lords, and fortunately some decent remains Lords in the House of Lords, because that's another thing what people don't know, that the House of Lords was completely shuffled, and proper Lords was just they was told to leave, and under the gender equality that was made some changes, so we have new people with new titles, but we still have a few decent people there, and they decide no, that can't go through, because this is like a power grab. This is a totalitarianism, really. This is on the paper. You can't just have a bill and the minister is asking you, that's it, I just want to have a power over everything, and you need to agree with that.
Shocking
and I will
stuff. Actually, shocking stuff. What would be the ideal outcome for you at this stage?
The ideal outcome will be if today the parliament decide, first of all, they will agree about the Lords' amendments, because the Lords actually decide to do some amendments, which the Common, of course, straight away said, no, we don't like it. So now the bill is coming back with the amendments, because the Lords insist on the amendments. They don't want to give power to the one minister and several mayors. They still want to keep the scrutiny, the committees, because that's the bill want to get rid of. The bill want to just cut people completely off any kind of influence on decision making. Right. So the Lords said, no, that is wrong. Devolution could only exist if you actually giving the power to people, as you're saying in the bill in the first place. So you're just introducing this like a power to people, but you're doing the completely opposite. So the ideal outcome. So the ideal outcome will be if the amendments will go through, if that will be agreement in the parliament. That is very unlikely, because if the government agree about the amendments, the whole agenda, the whole idea how this is going to work is not going to work. This is the main parts of the bill. So I can't see them agreeing. So that will probably go back to the Lords again, and it will be the ping pong game. The good thing is, the longer the ping pong game is, the weaker the bill become.
Right.
And the best outcome would be to scrap this completely, because this is wrong. And I can tell you this from my own experience, because the bill, all the devolution idea which came from Tony Blair is built on the same, is coming straight from the Marxist book, what we have in Poland. The structure, what they're introducing, we actually live in Poland with this for 40 years. We struggle with that. People was really going to the point when they had enough. And that's our future. I just want to say, because I was going to say this in the beginning. I'm sorry, I came later than I supposed to.
Absolutely, it's fine. It happens. I think what you're doing is really crucial, important work. I have to let you go just because I have to move on to my. But listen, please keep us updated, because it's really important what you're doing. You're following a really important paper trail, which essentially is about corruption. It's about local government corruption, lack of accountability, and they want to make it this totalitarian system, Marxist, as you said, and that's what we're dealing with. And were it not for people like you, we wouldn't have a damn clue that this was taking place, Madeleine. So I'm very, very grateful to your work. Final word to you.
I just want to say that this is so important. It is extremely important, and it's not on the news. It's not on the big alternative, the well-known alternative news as well. So these people will not provide you with anything. They follow the news, what is there. So you have only different perspective on the same news. Those are important things. This is our life. They actually deciding about our life today, and everything really that it's on the bill. If this go through, everything will be changes, and we're not going to have any possibility to challenge anything.
Lovely comments for you here. Lenticular says, a wonderful, diligent, intelligent warrior, Madeleine. Jan says, great stuff, Madeleine. This all needs to get out there. Healing Guidance says, thank you very much, Madeleine. Grateful, very informative. It is indeed. This is the stuff, people. Madeleine Hunt, everybody, General Secretary of the Heritage Party. Please keep us up to speed. Pizza, we do need more like Madeleine. Yes, indeed, we do. Take good care of yourself. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Pleasure. Take care. Wonderful stuff, important stuff. And it's not sexy or any of those things, but it's stuff that we need to know about because it impacts our life. And just briefly, before I bring in my next guest, it gives me no pleasure at all to see the extreme rise in cancer. I already covered this in my 2019 documentary, The Business of Cancer. I hate to say it was right. And yet somehow we have all these doctors going, how come there's this big rise in cancer? What could it possibly be? What could it possibly be indeed? And I see that YouTube is allowing now more discussion about the issue of vaccinations, about C19, about ivermectin. So I hope to be bringing on somebody soon to be talking about a number of things to do with this that we haven't previously been able to discuss before, including ivermectin. How are you all? How are you all in the comments? I want to bring in my next guest now. Let's not hang around. Here he is. Good morning, Alex Smith, aka Jonathan Royal. What would you prefer me to call you?
Whichever you prefer. I just put them both because I'm born, obviously, Alex Smith, but stage name from the show business side, Jonathan Royal, and they both interlink with the madness of the media, as it were.
Yes, indeed, they are. You're a hypnotist. You're a known media prankster. And
I was. I did that for about 6 years, from 1992 to 1998.
Right.
I was part of the whole television chat show, fake guest scandal. And also what wasn't covered as much because they didn't want to kind of mark their own homework and admit what had gone on. I also had numerous fabricated stories with a variety of different disguises, crazy, wacky things that you never think anyone would believe, appear in national print newspapers, international newspapers and magazines. And it was always my intention that I'd wait until they went, we know who you are. And then I'd go and come clean and do an article somewhere about all the different media pranks that I'd done.
Right.
That was the intention, and yes, it was from the purely selfish point of view of it would help heighten my
Profile.
persona.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing. Let me give some background to why you're here today. We were joined a few weeks ago by Paddy French, a journalist, I believe, who's also covered your situation. He's written extensively about the crimes of Murdoch's fake Sheikh, Mesa Mahmood. Paddy came on to talk about John Alford, who is now obviously dead, another victim of Mesa Mahmood's, corruption. And of course, Mesa Mahmood was eventually jailed. And you were one part of his sting, and you were convicted. You were jailed after, this is according to the headlines, you were jailed after handing over £1,000 in counterfeit coins. And you say it was a publicity stunt, but you were convicted and jailed. Tell people about that.
Okay, this is going to be slightly disjointed. This is stranger than fiction. That's why it says Circus of the Mind.
Weird. It's a weird
so
story.
That people can go and see legal documents that back up what I'm saying is true. If I heard this without being able to see legal court documents, I'd go, that is so batshit, it can't be true. But I'd done my bit as a media prankster, and amazingly, it hadn't fallen apart after 6 months. After 2 years, the same newspapers and same journalists were dealing with me, even though I could tell they recognised who I was. And I very rapidly discovered newspapers didn't care about truth and honesty. No. All they wanted was sensationalism and stories to sell more papers. And with television, they weren't really bothered about truth and honesty. They just wanted water cooler moments and fights in the studio in television debate shows and stuff to get the viewing figures, because television is run by accountants. I never expected it to go on for 6 years, but it did until such times as some journalists started saying, we can't use you, we know who you are, game's up type of thing. At which point my publicist, who I didn't know, had a bigger agenda of his own. Call it the misguidance of youth, stupidity of youth looking back. But why would my publicist, who'd helped me fabricate these media pranks, ever be comfortable with the idea of me then going to a media publication and exposing all the pranks when they'd had an involvement in making them happen? That wouldn't be good for them. But I didn't think about that at the time. Call me stupid, I was. It's as simple as that. But in any event, he suggested to me, look, the game's up with the media pranks, so why not do one final one before you go and expose them, as they were, because you'll get away with this one. Do a prank on the fake Sheikh Mesa Mahmood at the News of the World. He said, do the call girl scam. I said, what's that? He said, well, basically, if you ring up a local massage parlour in the local newspaper and ask for some girls to come to his hotel room, and you're not there when they arrive, they're not your girls, you've just rung a number for somebody, you've not broken any laws, you've done nothing wrong, but they'll write it up in the newspaper as though you're some kind of big-time pimp and pornographer. And then after the event, because you'll record everything that went on your own tape recorder, you'll be able to go to a rival publication and show that it was, blown out of all proportion. And apparently, he said to me, Sheikh had done such before, and looking back on historical articles that he'd done, he'd regularly used this call girl scam. That bit actually had truth in it. So I thought, yeah, cool, okay, it's a good way of launching the expose of everything. And that was what was meant to happen. And indeed, at the first meeting with the fake Sheikh, and I must say, I sent an anonymous letter, apparently anonymous letter in my handwriting, to the investigations editor at the News of the World. I know it sounds crazy, tipping off that at the time, my stage name was Alex Leroy, was a big-time pimp and pornographer. And I put a pay-as-you-go mobile phone number on it that was only given to that. So if it ever rung, I'd know it was Mesa Mahmood, or at least it was somebody at the News of the World. And sure enough, it did ring. And somebody calling themselves Perry Khan being one of the names he regularly used, or Perez Khan, asking if I could arrange girls. Cutting a long story short, it's explained more at circusofthemind.net. I met with him, and it was supposed to be just the call girl scam I've explained. But the next day, I get another phone call, and he wants me to go meet him again So I do, because I want to get this, as journalists would say, over the line. I need to get this in print before I can go to another publication to do the whole expose of the media prankster stuff, including the News of the World call girl scam. And during this, he asked me about other stuff. And because I know whatever I say is nonsense, you know, he asked about drugs. And I say, yeah, I can get some, knowing full well I can't. And then he asked about various things, including counterfeit money. And I went, yeah, I can get some. He said, have you got any samples? So I went in my pocket. And as it happened, I had £3 coins on me at the time, which I handed over. They were genuine pound coins, which is why the evidence that people will see on circusofthemind.net talks about missing coins in the evidence, because these 3 coins were never given to the police because they would prove that they were genuine pound coins. But anyway, I gave him these 3 coins, and he actually, on video, which I've recently got hold of those secret videos, he looks at them and he goes, these are the best counterfeits I've ever seen. Well, they would be, because they were genuine. And I hope the story will go in that Sunday. Sadly, Sunday comes, no story appears. I get another call from Perry Khan. Have you managed to get hold of the drugs? And I think, he's not going to give up until I get him some drugs. Well, I'm not doing that. A, because I don't know where to get any from. And B, I've no intentions of breaking any laws. This isn't going to plan. So I meet up with him again. And sorry, before I meet up with him again, there's multiple phone calls, including from my publicist, who's saying, like, you can't let this guy down. And he's acting as though he, you know, it's vital that I go through with this. And then he starts putting the emphasis on the counterfeit coins. And, well, I don't know where to get them from, but suddenly I'm informed of where I can get them from one of Mahmoud's associates, i.e. I didn't know he was an associate of Mahmoud at the time, but it turns out that my publicist was now on the payroll of Mazen Mahmoud. Now, you might think, well, how did they know what my intention was of exposing Mahmoud's dishonesty, which is all I thought it was, that he'd write up something as though it was more than it actually was. But what I didn't know at the time, and I didn't know until 2021, when I was approached by the claimant's legal advisors for the MITVIL, the mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation, is that I was having my phone hacked by Glenn Mulcair, who has kindly given me a witness statement to support my appeal to the Criminal Cases Review
And it's
Commission.
important at this point to let people know who Glenn Mulcair is. He was the private eye, right, who was involved in the whole phone hacking scandal, correct?
He was the main phone hacker. His name's been bandied around with the Millie Dale scandal.
Right.
But he's turned whistleblower. Glenn's an incredibly nice guy who unfortunately at one time went down a path that he got in way too far. He was actually originally worked for a guy called John Boyle, who had links to intelligence agencies.
So I don't want us to get too lost in the detail, because we only have a certain period of time. Yeah. So you went and got some fake coins. Is that the situation? I didn't know where to get them from, but I get told where to get them from, but I don't want to do it. So I make excuses that my bank account's been frozen over some massive drug deal. So I can't do it. And I'm hoping he'll just go ahead and do the story. He doesn't. He turns around and he says, come to the hotel and meet me. So I do. And he gives me money, which is entrapment to the biggest degree. And they always denied up until the very last minute of my legal case, Alex Smith versus News Group Newspapers, that was filed on the 30th of September 22, settled at the end of 24 in my favour. And they gave me a private written letter of apology for the illegal actions of their journalist. They always denied that I'd been given the money up front, because that would be entrapment and not allowed. And all. Yes. But the videos that I got during disclosure of Alex Smith versus News Group Newspapers, I got all the secret covert videos, all the secret audios. I got all the photographs that were taken by private investigators they had following me, which they had no legal basis to do, because they had no prima facie evidence of any illegal activity, because I was actually the source. But I couldn't prove in my court case that I was the source, because the handwritten letter from me was in Mahmoud's files, and he was protected by journalistic privilege, that he didn't have to
show who his source was. I've got the receipts from multiple receipts, well over a dozen, 16, I think, in fact, showing that they were having me followed and or hacking my phone and using unlawful landline tapping and various other things, not just before the story and during it, but during the legal process of this going through the courts. Because obviously now, looking back on it, I didn't know that they were phone hacking me. I didn't know at the time that my drinks had been drugged. But I now have a statement from Steve Grayson, who wrote a book called Downfall, who used to work with Mahmood, saying he witnessed Mahmood drugging people's drinks. I had bits of my memory disappeared over what went on, which is a known side effect of things like GHB. And now I've got the videos. When he ordered drinks to the hotel room, rather than ordering vodka and orange in glasses, he ordered it specifically a jug of orange and a jug of vodka. And on the video, his team can be seen pouring these drinks, handling them, and having ample opportunity to, I assert, drug them.
Right.
So from drugging my drinks, hacking my phone, using social engineering, private investigators, telling me through my publicist engineering where to get the coins from. And the videos show I arrived early on the day that he wanted me to pick these coins up. And not only did he give me the money up front, which shouldn't have happened, but then he made a point of getting multiple drinks for me. I said, no, I need to get off. He made a point of getting multiple drinks and sending his apparent bodyguard downstairs to speak to my friend who was in a taxi waiting for me because I didn't want to go on my own to a strange pub to pick up these coins. And the only reason I was going to do it is because they gave me the money up front. I'd be able to prove that. And I thought, sod it, they'll never get in public circulation. They'll go straight to the police. Right. And I'll have the journalistic license of being able to say I knew and prove that I knew who he was and all this. Well, sadly, they were 20 steps ahead of me because of phone hacking and landline tapping and manipulation, and all this stuff that's illegal, none of which was ever disclosed to the police. But then when it gets to the police, to make matters worse, the serial perjurer, Mazza Mahmood, who I now have evidence in 1994. Bear in mind, it was 1998 when I got arrested, 99. And I pled not guilty all the way through to the first day of trial. The only reason I changed my plea from not guilty to guilty is because I was advised he didn't have to disclose who his sources were. So I couldn't prove that I had I'd set it up. I couldn't prove that. But I can do now because of what I've got through discovery. And also I was told that an entrapment defence wouldn't work, which I've now been told was bad advice, especially given the evidence I've now got that proves that's exactly what went on.
And also, just to interject here, you're also now, obviously, you're now privileged with the information that this man has been proven to be highly corrupt because he was found guilty of tampering with evidence to do with the pop star Tulissa.
Yeah, right, the worst thing of all, though, beyond that, the worst thing of all is the level of corruption here that should concern the general public.
Right.
Because it's not just me. There were other victims.
There's so many, though.
Innocent who were wrongfully convicted because very likely, I'm not the only one. Numerous people asserted that drugs were drinks were drugs. Sorry, my FND kicking in there. There's now evidence we know because there was various other Mahmood victims. Indeed, I was one of the last 3 people standing in trance 4 of the Mitville with Lord Tom Watson and Duke of Sussex Prince Harry. And I actually gave them witness statements because we all had the commonality of being victims of Mahmood's perjurous lies. Because even though I did go and pick up those coins from a source where I was told where to get them from, using money he gave me up front, they engineered the whole thing. They were all parts of the supply chain. And I've got well over a dozen witness statements from people who've had similar stings done on them and involved in engineering the stings, including a lady called Sarah Issett, who used to work at the News of the World that Paddy mentioned during the interview about John Alfred.
Yes.
She used to work with Mahmood, and she's gave John a statement, but gave me a statement as well, kindly, about how it all operated. And when this is all put together with this key fact, in 1994, a court trial collapsed. Get ready for this, people, because there's a couple of things here. Some may not surprise a lot of people, but a court trial collapsed because of Mahmood's perjurous lies and evidence. And at the time, Piers Morgan was his boss. And rather than reprimanding the fake Sheikh, sacking him or whatever. He promoted the fake Sheikh and thus helped enabled him to go on and ruin loads of other people's lives. That's one part. The second part is that during discovery in the Mitville mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation in the High Court a number of years ago, some documents extraordinarily were disclosed from the Enfield archive and newsgroup newspapers. And amongst them were communications, and to this day, we don't know how newsgroup newspapers have these in their archives, but communications from the Metropolitan Police to the Crown Prosecution Service and back from the Crown Prosecution Service to the Metropolitan Police, clearly stating that Mazza Mahmood, because of that collapse case in 1994, could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth in any further court cases.
Right.
And
right.
yet this was never disclosed to me or any other victim. I've
Appalling.
also found out, thanks to Paddy French's great investigation and his book Rogue, that there were at least 3 other court cases collapsed before I went to court in 1999 that should have been disclosed to me under CPIA, CPIA 1996 disclosure regulations, because of material to the credibility of the main witness, Mahmood. I was never told about them. If I had been, I would never have changed my plea from not guilty to guilty on the first day of
You
trial.
were not you were not given full information. Really appalling.
Which means my guilty plea can be vacated under case law.
I mean, it's really interesting. I do wonder whether his victims and their extensive will ever get true justice. So you were convicted, you served time, and then you finally found out all this information that should have been present at the trial. How has this impacted your life? Well,
the fact is, I've been very lucky that I was born on a circus. I learnt resilience as a child through being bullied. My story's on my other website, magicalguru.com. But the thing is, I learned life skills that helped me carry on and persevere. But there is no question whatsoever. I know multiple times, for example, in 2001, I made a European television series in Amsterdam with comedy, magic, hypnosis, a whole bunch of things. And it got shown in some limited small areas. But when we took it to bigger broadcasters like Channel 4 and other places, there were people that told the production company, we loved the show. I mean, it seems outdated now when you look at it. It's ridiculous. But back then, they said, we love the show, but the thing is, we start showing this, and someone's going to bring up the whole News of the World thing again, and we just can't be associated.
So it's followed you forever. It's followed you forever, really, hasn't it? I mean, it would. It's a conviction, and it's conviction for fraud, so it's followed you forever. So
let's not forget that they wrote up stuff that I never did, and they also wrote up things that I never actually said, which I can prove now because I've got all the videos of secret filming. Well, I did say, if he asked me if I could get drugs, I went, yeah. Obviously, knowing that I was never ever going to get him stuff. But when they wrote up the article, it was written up as though I was a drug dealing, counterfeit money supplying, Uzi gun salesman, pimp and pornographer.
Right. Well, they did the same
thing. I was the king of the underworld.
Yes, they did the same thing, John Alford. They did the same thing with Talla. So we know they've got form. So what's happening in terms of your appeal? Because have you submitted several times to the CCRC?
Yeah. This in itself, the CCRC, unfortunately, as we know, has got a bit of a checkered history. Now, when the Talla trial collapsed, the CPS kindly gave us victims a disclosure pack about stuff that had come out in the Talla trial, so that our legal teams could decide whether or not we felt that gave us grounds to appeal our convictions. What they didn't do in 2014 was disclose to us any of the dozen or more other collapsed court cases due to his perjurous lies that they were already aware of, that Paddy French covers in his book. Why not? Why did they never disclose those things to us? And to this day, I actually contacted them last year, the CPS, in writing, asking them to disclose and explaining why, and pointing out their CPA obligations and whatnot. And they wrote back to me, and I've got the email. It's been given to the CCRC. They've said they will categorically engage with me no further and have no intentions of disclosing anything to me. What are they trying to cover up? Well, cover up the fact that from 1994, every prosecution against a Mazza Mahmood fake Sheikh victim has arguably been, I would assert, a malicious prosecution by the police and CPS because they were in full knowledge and in fact stated to each other in writing in 1994 that he could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth ever again. And yet they colluded with him on things like the Beckham kidnap case, where nobody ever got done long term. It was shown to be a sham at the end.
Yeah.
But yet Scotland Yard were there. They were as the News of the World. The News of the World were filming, and Scotland Yard arrested the people that had been socially engineered into doing something they had no intentions of doing, and in actual fact fell apart. The Red Mercury case, which never existed, Red Mercury. But was it Red Mercury? Yeah. Anyway, the Mercury case with Mahmood. Sorry, my functional neurological disorder.
No, I'm looking at the freedom of information request that you submitted with all of this information, and you've been blocked at every turn, haven't you? They refused to give you that information.
Decades.
Yeah, they refused to give you that freedom of information, and they did it on the grounds of, they said it would be too expensive to look at some of the information that you wanted. Well, this is about a man's life and liberty that has been destroyed.
Not just me, look. Not just me.
No, I get it. I get it. I absolutely get it. I think it's absolutely outrageous. But as you say, he was promoted by his boss, Piers Morgan, but Rupert Murdoch was financing the whole thing, wasn't he?
And I would assert, as do all the Mittville claimants, the phone hacking claimants it's called, but it's more than that. It can be phone tapping, other illegal or unlawful activity. I would assert in what they call the generic particulars of concealment and destruction, a copy of which is actually on circusofthemind.net. It's an openly available public document. We would assert that executives such as Rebecca Brooks, Piers Morgan at the time, even all the way up to Rupert Murdoch, we asserted in those particulars of claim that we believe the evidence suggests strongly that they all knew, turned a blind eye to at the very least, or actively encouraged the activities of the fake Sheikh. And that's probably part of the reason why they would not allow any of us to step into a courtroom to have this evidence aired, and instead weaponize Part 36 offers, meaning that if they offered us £1 more than the judge would give us when we won the case, that we basically had to accept it, because if we stepped into the courtroom, we'd win because of the evidence we have, I assert. But then, because the judge wouldn't award us more than they'd already offered us, we'd be liable for all of their legal costs, which would have been in excess of £10 million. Well, I couldn't afford that. And to be fair, neither could, Lord Tom Watson or Duke of Sussex. So, when people sometimes get the impression the media try and make out these celebrities or even members of the public, there's money grabbing. That's why they didn't go to court. No, I wanted to go to court. I wanted to get it out there, clear my name as much as could be to make it easier to go. But they weaponized, and they spent over £1.5 billion, not million, I said £billion, to silence victims, not just fake Sheikh victims, but victims of phone hacking. People who were just innocent bystanders at terrorist attacks.
Jonathan, I get it. I understand why you're upset. I get all of it, because we're dealing with levels of corruption that some people can't even begin to comprehend. Mazza Mahmood,
sounds stranger than fiction.
Yeah, it is. A lot of it really is. And you have a ton of stuff on your website. I think I might already have put the link in the description. Over 300 videos exposing the fake Sheikh, right?
With court documents, with sworn affidavits and statements from people who worked with him saying they witnessed him drug drinks. Glenn Mulcair kindly confirming that he hacked my phone on the instructions of Greg Miskew, the former editor and Mahmood's boss. Greg Miskew, who kindly gave me a statement before he died, confirming this is what took place, that I was framed, as were Mahmood victims. I have got so much evidence. It will start the dominoes falling. And I went to, after the Talla trial, I went to the Court of Appeal, but the single judge turned me down. He said it was out of time, all this. So I went to the CCRC, and in 2018, years later, they finally decided to just lazily copy and paste what the single judge had said, literally, practically word for word, and turn me down. And then in 2021, I got contacted and got this evidence of phone hacking. And when I got the discovery stuff, I put in another application to the Court of Appeal, the full court, where you go to 3 judges. And unfortunately, they refused to give me permission to appeal out of time, which meant all the evidence I had by then had never been looked at.
Right.
So I sent it to the CCRC in 2022.
Yeah.
And they turned around and said it was not fresh evidence.
Right.
Now, it was, because the judge, the 3 judges never looked at it because they refused me permission to act out of time. So the CCRC made an error in 2022. So we're now on the 3rd of February this year, as per it says on circusofthemind.net and the videos, I've delivered all that evidence that I had in 2022, but on top of that, stuff that they can't on any level argue as being anything other than fresh evidence, because it was never available at any previous trials because Mahmood lied and didn't disclose it to the police. It's never gone to court. If he took the truth from day one.
So you are waiting for the outcome of that. You are waiting for the outcome of that. Keep me informed. I have to cut you there, unfortunately, just because time does not allow me anymore. But
thank you so much for helping me to get this out there.
No worries. I hate those people. They disgust me. I think what they've done is so corrupt. They have brought a terrible name to journalism. So anything I can do, I'm happy to. Keep me updated, Jonathan. Let me know what the outcome is. Take care of yourself. Okay?
Thank you very much indeed.
All right. No worries. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Jonathan Royle, everybody. There we go. And I hate them. I really hate them. And so I'm quite happy to give people a platform to tell us how corrupt these awful, awful people are, including Rupert Murdoch. Now, very quickly, before I bring in my next guest, Lucy Letby, a former boss at the hospital where nurse Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and convicted of the attempted murder of a further 7. So a former boss has been arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice. An investigation into corporate manslaughter and gross negligence manslaughter was launched into the Countess of Chester Hospital. And that was following Lucy Letby's convictions. And detectives have now arrested a suspect on suspicion of perverting the course of justice in connection with these convictions. Cheshire Constabulary said a search warrant was carried out on a property last Wednesday, and the individual was arrested and later bailed pending further inquiries. And the Cheshire Constabulary executed a search warrant at a property in connection with Operation Duet, which is what it's called. And police confirmed the suspect is one of 3 arrested in June last year on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. This is going to get interesting. And I don't know if you saw over the last week, but Amanda Knox was all over media talking about the wrongful conviction of Lucy Letby. Now, clean hands, I'm no fan of Amanda Knox. I don't think that she is a great advocate of Lucy Letby. I know lots of people are really pleased about it, but I don't support it. I'm not an Amanda Knox supporter. At the very least, she falsely accused an innocent man. And I just think that it's just really not great, actually, to have her out there advocating for Lucy Letby. And so, you know, Knox has stated that she believes Letby may be innocent, citing convincing alternative explanations for the infant's deaths. But she's not alone. Lots of people believe that. And there has been an appeal submitted to the CCRC, although the first was refused. And so they are now hoping that with the new evidence and Lucy Letby's, well, semi-new now barrister, that things will change. I personally believe that this will be found to be an unsafe conviction. That's what I personally believe. And I'm not sure if you need somebody like Amanda Knox out there vouching for you. I wouldn't want Amanda Knox vouching for me under any circumstances whatsoever. But some people seem to think it's a good idea. It's a good plan. So there you go. Right. I am going to bring in my next guest. This is a tough story, people. I hope you're ready for it. Trigger warning, big trigger warning. Okay, let me bring in my guests. Here they are. We have Louise PUGH and Dr. GAIL John. Welcome, both of you.
Hey. Hello.
Good to see you. I wish it was under better circumstances. What we're about to talk about is some really heavy stuff. I had a conversation with Louise on Friday. I talked briefly with GAIL yesterday. And you two didn't know each other. GAIL, you'd actually covered part of Louise's story, not part of, you covered some of Louise's story in a dissertation that you were doing to do with the Clyde murders. Have I pronounced that correctly? I often say Clydac, but is it so?
Yeah.
But it's the very famous murders, which includes the brutal killing of 3 generations of the same family: Mandy Power, her daughters Katie and Emily, and their grandmother Doris Dawson. You were their next door neighbour, Louise. You were in court for this, weren't you? And both you and GAIL believe that this was a wrongful conviction, that the man convicted, David Morris, was not the man responsible for the murders. GAIL, I want you to start first of all. Why did you think that, GAIL?
Right. Well, in 2012 till 2018-19, I conducted a doctoral thesis with Sheffield University regarding the statistics in Swansea, because the social poverty statistics in Swansea were flagging up a huge concern. Now, there's a quote from Brian Stevenson, he's well known, and he says this, that the opposite of poverty is not wealth, it's justice. So the social poverty statistics flagged up a massive justice problem within Swansea. Now, so my research, it was all user-led. So I was asking youngsters their experiences about educational failure. It was all about their experiences of education failure for me to uncover the reasons behind the social poverty statistics, which we're talking Swansea, we're hitting the highest numbers right across the UK for opioid deaths, etc. So anyway, I ended up, because I was interviewing, one of the themes that came up was child sexual abuse. The question was about education failure, nothing at all about paedophilia, trafficking. So that's what started it, really. One of the people who was interviewed as part of this, she stated this. In fact, we're not just talking about Mandy Power and Doris Dawson, the Clydach murders, but also if we look at Lynette White's case, you've got to look at Charmaine Spears, Charmaine and the Prophet, that's in the BBC. There's a programme about that at the moment. Now, all 3 or 4 of those ladies, because Doris Dawson was also one of them, they actually whistle-blew about paedophilia. And then 18 months or so later, they're murdered. So that's where the sort of interest sort of came from. And then I ended up then doing a master's degree in law, and I focused my attention on criminal law, and then did a dissertation looking at the Clydach murders because I wanted to get my hands on the court transcripts. And that was before I met Louise.
I haven't met her.
This was a horrific story. I remember it very clearly. And I also remember that a former police officer who was in a relationship with Mandy Power was also investigated. Who was he?
Former police officer,
Yeah.
not a he.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course, because it was the whole point was about a lesbian relationship, right? Yes.
Yeah, but she shouldn't have been investigated.
Right. So here's where it gets interesting, because obviously, Louise, you were very much involved in this, and you were involved in this because you were a neighbour, right? You were a neighbour, and Mandy was looking out for you, wasn't she?
Well, yeah, but from the January, I actually stayed with Mandy.
Right. So you weren't there when it happened?
No, I was babysitting.
And that is quite key, isn't it? It's to do with you, falling asleep?
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Right, well, the morning, obviously, I went to work, came back, we went to Quicksave, I went to Quicksave with them. She picked out a bottle of wine, Mars bar. We went back, I played with the girls. The day went on, then Mandy had a visitor. Then Doris wanted food, so I went down to get her food. I changed her dressings, whatever.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not quite sure why that suddenly went off. Bear with me, people. This is weird. We're having that's so weird. It suddenly, look at that. It suddenly just took you out for some reason. I'm not going to allege any conspiracy here, but that just seemed, that never happens, right? So that was just weird. I do apologize. Right, go on, carry on, Louise.
So I went and got Doris her last meal. Said I love you when I'd gone babysitting, and Mandy went to babysit where she was for her nephew, for his children.
The whole family was slain.
Yeah.
Horrendous stuff. And Gail, you have never believed that they got the right man, right? You believe that David Morris was a scapegoat.
Well, the thing is, we've got to remember is that he wasn't just, you know, there were other scapegoats. They tried to pin it on Alison Lewis. Now, Mandy Power was processed in oxy bleach after she was murdered to wipe all the DNA off her body. And then Alison Lewis's DNA was planted on the body thereafter. So somebody obviously wanted to frame Alison Lewis, but she wasn't the only one who had items, you know, in that murder scene. You know, there were other people who had the finger pointed on them, including Louise. Louise, you know, Louise was taken up to which church in
Cardiff.
Yeah.
Police officer took me up there to a family centre, and he's...
You're all right, Louise. I know this kind of stuff is almost awful to...
I'm fine. I'm fine. Anyway, he sat me down and he said, "Do what?" He said, I do think I'm on the right path. I said, what path is that? And he said, I think you did it.
So you were accused of it?
He accused me of it, yeah, up in Cardiff.
Outrageous stuff. And you provided a testimony that challenged the prosecution's case against David Morris, and essentially the establishment came after you full force. And there's very good reason why I believe that you're key to all of this. What were you just going to say there, Louise?
Yeah, it's just they had all the information on the Monday.
That's like
they had all the information when the two officers came out to me, the two nice officers, I want to say, because the rest of the officers were absolute monsters. The two nice officers that I spoke to in the first week, they were amazing. It took me ages to get my statements, didn't it? Yeah. I've had my statements back. There's an imaginary dog in my statements. There's an imaginary diary.
Right.
There's officers in that I've never spoken to.
Right. Both of you have maintained that this is a cover-up, and a state cover-up at that. This involves the establishment, the state at work. And one of the reasons that you believe that is because of Louise's history. Louise, when we talked on Friday, and we're going to talk about it, right? I was so curious to know why the police would do nothing, because you have been extensively abused and trafficked by your own mum, right? She'd bring people... They don't care. She'd bring people to the house, and these men would come up to your room, and then afterwards you'd be bathed in bleach, and then she started trafficking you across the country, Gloucester, Telford, across the UK, and you maintain that the police were involved. We obviously can't say names because that would be defamation, but tell us, why do you maintain that?
Well, because she had handlers down here, because she was a police informant, my mum. Obviously, because she's done bad things, which she has, I know she has, but she's what you call, a double agent?
Right, for the IRA and South Wales Police.
Yeah, she was an informer for both while she was alive. So I don't get how when I told people as well, I'd say like, oh, my mum's got another family. This is when I was little, and I'd be told, shut up, you're lying. Oh, my mum hit me, shut up, you're lying. I said to a police officer, my mum's hurting me, shut up, you're lying. Your mum wouldn't do that. Yes, my mum was amazing outside the house, but when we were inside the house or away, completely different story.
You had a child. You gave birth at 13, and
Yeah,
was it
in
was
Wolverhampton.
Mandy was Mandy involved in some way? Was she going to have the
She
child
knew.
for you?
She knew I was pregnant. I did try to hide it from her at first, and she was saying, you can't, you know, there's just no way you can't hide it from me. So my mother got angry then, and Mandy just told her basically, go with, you know, I need to speak to Louise on her own. Because I was always shocked that Mandy would stand up a little bit to my mother, and then she'd go, oh my God, is she going to hit me? And, you know, panic, like, because I don't know why people would be afraid of my mum. I didn't understand.
Mm.
So anyway, I spoke to Mandy, and she said she'd help me. She was going to bring the baby up because it was a boy. She wanted a boy. But I was going to continue with my education and work. And then obviously there was a family reunion planned in Wolverhampton from my mum's family. And I got taken there by train. I remember being woozy when I got off. I remember being in a cab, and then I'm outdoors. Then I woke up on a bed, and I was woozy. I didn't know what was going on, and my legs were up in the air, like bent. The stirrups, they call them, don't they? And I only knew that from when I've had my children, you know, from 2000. I conked out again. Then I opened my eyes, and there's a man walking out the door with a baby in his arms, and the baby's head is, I know it sounds stupid, but looking at him, but all you can see is blue eyes. But then I'm out again. So
You're 13 years old, for goodness sake. It's so traumatic what you've experienced. And you tried to report it. You were actually told by police to shut your mouth.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah, shut my mouth and shut up. Your mother's. I can't remember what they said about my mum, but it was just shut your mouth.
But it was enough to know that she was protected. So what we're getting from this, people, is that Mandy Power, who was slain in this brutal attack along with her children and grandmother, was aware of what was happening with Louise, and it involved police, right?
Yeah.
Is that, am I right on this, Gail? Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think what needs to be said as well is that Louise did not come back with the baby. The baby was in
Yes.
effect. So, and to be honest with you, with this case, that's what the missing piece was, that Mandy Power. Now, when I spoke to Louise, first time I met Louise, which was April 2022, because she presented to me as either institutionalized or like an abuse victim because the way that she was behaving around me, and it broke my heart. And I just asked her a simple question: if you could have anything for your birthday, what would you like? And she said, please, could you help me to reconnect to my dad, who she hadn't seen for 35 years? And could you help me find my firstborn son? So I asked her then what was going on. She then explained, and I said to her, well, do you realise that's an illegal birth? And she had no clue, because I suppose as a child, it becomes normalised. But Mandy Power would have known that it was an illegal birth.
Wow. See, this is really interesting stuff, because the connections there, we cannot underestimate at all. And police came to your house, right? I mean, the thing is, Louise, they did everything they could to demonize you during the trial, didn't they?
No.
To make out that you were a fantasist.
Well, they called me a fantasist. They said I was a lesbian and that I was jealous. I was sharing a bed with Mandy from the age of 6, and Doris. From the age of 6, I was sharing a bed with them. Does that mean they're paedophiles? No, it doesn't. I didn't think of Mandy that way. In fact, I'll tell you a conversation me and Mandy had. When she told me she was a lesbian, I said, you touch me, as a joke, right? We were joking around. So she was going, oh yeah, so yeah. I said, you touch me. I said, I'm gonna snap your hands. And then she just went, oh, you know, we were joking around in the kitchen. I am not a lesbian, right? The first thing people ask me when they see me is, are you a lesbian?
I mean, it's whether you were or not, it doesn't matter. But the fact that this is what they've wanted to no, it's an image. It's an image they wanted to create about you. That was it. But you actually said to me that were it not for Mandy, and Mandy essentially took over the role of a mother, you wouldn't even know what love was.
No, I wouldn't. Because the way she acted around her children, I was thinking, well, why don't my mother do that?
Oh.
right? Because the first time I actually approached Mandy, right, she didn't believe me, which is fair enough because I was, what was I, 6, 7?
Oh, bless.
Right? So obviously she said to me, don't be silly, and, you know, carried on for another few years then, and then she sort of clocked on because my mother take me away with her on the weekends. So Mandy did actually, she phoned social services at first when she was living in Penydre. So why was nothing done?
Oh, I mean, that's the big question. And this is exactly why we're getting to the nub now of what you really know needs to take place, right, Gail? And the fact is that Louise is not the only child that we know that we believe that this happened to, right? Other children are still going through it now, Louise, you said to me.
From Neath and Pontardawe, and they're being transferred by taxi firms. I'm not going to say anything else, but that's all I can say.
But children are going missing in the care system, and we haven't got enough of a spotlight on what is happening in Wales. Even
in Liverpool, kids go missing. Social services, then the workers, they get a bonus for depending on the child's eye colour, skin colour, and hair colour. That is wrong. Why should they get a bonus depending on that?
Really? I don't know about that.
When I got sent away to 2016 domestic violence, right? I got put in Liverpool. I got sent to a domestic violence unit in Liverpool. And when I got there, obviously we got there, whatever, settled. Then social services came out. They turned around to me and said, right, we don't know why you still got your kids. I said, what do you mean, why have I still got my kids? I said, I'm a mum. I don't know why you... I said, what do you mean you don't know why I've still got... Well, your diagnosis. I said, don't give a shit about my diagnosis. I said, I could be diagnosed, I don't know what. I said, but just, you know, cut the chase now. I said, my kids are my protective factor. So anyway, she said to me, well, they were going to try and take your children. I said, why? I said, I've done nothing wrong. I said, I've done everything they've told me to. And she went, well, you know, for the boy, she said, you know, we could get like 80, 90 grand bonus for one child, my boy, because he was blonde and blue-eyed and a boy.
Oh, I see. Oh my God, I need to cover that separately. That's absolutely insane. So, Gail, is it your understanding then that Louise has been targeted because of not only what she's experienced, but what she knows?
Yes. I mean, you just got to look at the appeal documents. There's evidence out there in the public domain. Because when I did my doctorate, the dissertation, the criminal law, I was only allowed to look at information in the public domain. There is enough information in the, even though I've got statements from witnesses, from neighbours and close friends to the murders and the family, etc. But there's in the public domain, the Sky documentary, you can see the abuse of Louise. The police have actually published an interview where they've basically got Louise's abuser in that interview. Louise had black eyes. You know, she'd been beaten up at that interview. You know, and police looked on.
It's in the end of the murder in the valleys.
Okay, yes, that's the documentary, right?
It's the last bit of audio that's played.
Right.
That telling them, well, my mother's telling me to say one thing, you're telling me to say another thing.
Right.
When I'm telling the truth, I get, you know, a bit.
You were caught between a rock and a hard place, because if you told on your mother, you'd be in trouble. If you told what was going on. And so the whole thing is really problematic. One of the things you said to me, again, we have to be careful on defamation, but you believe that your mum was being handled, that her handlers were police at the time, were serving police. And so this appears to go very deep. And this is why it needs to be an inquiry, because Gail, as I said to you, this is not just about what took place in Wales, but this links up to the rest of the UK. Louise's case could answer a lot of questions, right, Gail?
Oh yeah, 100%. But also Louise's mother, she was a victim.
She was.
She modelled what had been done to herself in Ireland during the time of the Magdalene houses, the industrial.
Right.
She modelled exactly what had been done to her to Louise.
Well, and as you said, and again, we have to be careful, but Louise, several of your siblings are now dead, and you said the same things happened to them, right?
Yeah.
So this is extensive, and we do know that your mum was abused. We know by the age of 13, she herself was pregnant by a pastor, right? So again, it's a repeat of a pattern happening to you. But you see, for me, as a mother, I think the buck has to stop. It's like, I was abused as a child, but I didn't carry it on, right? So I can only... it's, to me, it's no justification at all. It's like it might contribute to the reasoning of it, but it's no justification to what was happening to you. But Gail, carry on. Why we need that inquiry?
Okay, because we've got, 3 women who whistle blew about child sexual abuse. Lynette White was due in court the day after her murder. She was in court testifying about child sexual abuse, or she should have been. She already had whistleblown to the BBC. I have a written statement here. I'm not going to mention any names, but it says here, despite links connecting police officers to the child sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of Lynette White, the police involved in perverting the course of justice were mislabeling and engaging in human error without repercussions. The 2010 police corruption trial, which fell apart because evidence went missing. Now, the same police officer's name is coming up. In fact, he is connected with both the Lynette White and also the Clydach murders. His name is in the appeal document, where he's written in Louise's statement.
I've never even met him.
And we were talking about this morning.
I know the names of the officers I spoke to. I still know the names because there was only 2 nice ones and then the rest were horrible.
And all of this needs to be scrutinized properly. It feels like a cover-up, doesn't it? So let me just get this straight. And that is, Gail, you believe that Louise is key to answering a number of questions, including to do with the murders of Mandy Power and her family, right? And you also, I think both of you believe that there is a very strong involvement and thus a cover-up of then serving police officers, correct?
Yes, but not just the police, because the social services have been involved as organisations to safeguard these paedophiles, where children have been put back with their abusers. So the social services and police have known about this trafficking. Now, you've got Charmaine Spears. Her the programme is on a Monday where they're talking about Charmaine and the Prophet. Now, Charmaine was also involved in helping trafficked girls in Swansea, and she was known for that. Now, after the programme, one of them messaged me, because I was also involved, and she said to me that after she went to the police, her house was being raided on a daily basis by the police. She also stated that after she reported trafficking and grooming to the police, she was then assaulted. Her and a friend who'd reported it to the police were then assaulted by the police.
Wow.
So it's not just... I'm not, saying not just, but
no, I understand. You're saying that's why it's wider. It's like, this is a spider's web that you found.
And Louise was called as a prosecution witness. It's all a massive cover up. But if you look at the appeal documents, the information is there. Now, if you look at, I think it's 2005 appeal, R versus Morris. If people would like to look at section 62, it states that a person who's in that section 62, that his fingerprints were all over the property. They were in the shed where the murder weapon was kept. He lied, right? And he his fingerprints on matches.
Can I say something? I just want to say something before Gail finishes, right? Yes. Mandy didn't have a gas stove. She had an electric one.
Oh, wait, that was a huge part of the story, though, wasn't it?
Yes. This person who's in appeal document 2005, section 62, claimed that he sort of struck matches with his fingerprint, to light a gas cooker that did not exist.
There's no gas cooker left.
Now, can I just say one thing as well? He, plus somebody very close to him and his family, when they were arrested, according to a high-profile solicitor, they went to the police with 40 names of corrupt police officers, right? So that would have made them police informers,
Right.
and therefore given us £1 million thereafter. And then David Morris then was on the scene. You know, it's the time frame. You've got to look at, you've got a time frame.
It's very interesting. Let me just read you some of the comments. Stephen said, these two ladies are very brave. People are talking in the comments about being safe. And you are brave because you're still living in the area, right?
I am, yeah.
So are you not scared? Because it's clear there's a lot of corruption going on there.
I'll be honest, right? I lived with my mother for 16 years. She was the only person I was afraid of.
Oh,
I'm not afraid of nobody.
Breaks my heart to hear that.
I've got my kids to look after. So
the thing is, you've got a choice. You either keep your mouth shut and you become part of the problem.
Right.
You're complicit. Or you speak up and hopefully make a difference for those who are still being abused in, you know, I'm sorry, I can't turn away from when you hear, you know, stories of abuse and things. And, you know, it takes one person. I mean, you've got the grooming gang inquiry in England. In Wales, we're classed as second class citizens.
But you'd like it extended to Wales, wouldn't you?
Yes.
They need to extend it down.
And now, are you talking about the Rupert Lowe one or the government one? Which one do you think would be either? Just anybody to shine a light on what's taken place, right?
They need to wake up now, because there's still people going missing from Pontardawe. There's still people going missing from Neath. And it's taxi services that are taking them cross borders because they've got contracts with them, contracts with the houses.
Whoa.
That is wrong. They shouldn't be doing that.
Wow. This has to stop. I'm so glad that both of you chose to join me today. It's so important what you're saying. I've got to read you some more comments. Mel's, go Louise, strong woman. And Tanya says, you are so strong and hopefully you will be the strength others need to speak up. Because you know the thing about obviously courage, what was it? One of the suffragettes said that is courage calls to courage. And when people speak out like you're doing, all it takes is one person to hear it who can add more to this jigsaw puzzle, because I think that you've probably got this story right. And they've done everything they can over the decades to demonize you, to write you off. I'm so glad GAIL is in your court. So glad.
Well, I'll be honest, right? They've kept quiet for a few years because they've threatened to take my kids away. They threatened to do this, that, and the other to me, right? And I mean, the police have bothered me for years. I mean, they stopped bothering me once GAIL helped me have cameras put outside my house. So they don't bother me as much. And now they have to phone me if they want to come to the house because they frightened my daughter. My daughter's autistic. They came to the house with a battering ram, you know, the big red key.
Oh, come on.
For a person who's not lived there, only his mum lived there, I think about 10, 11, 12 years before. And he was knocking on the door and he was trying to get in. And Ellie said, no. And I came out to the bedroom and I said, what the F do you think you're doing? And he looked up, he went, oh, I'm looking for so-and-so. I said, you know he don't live here. I said, because you've been checking on me every week.
And that was after.
That was after I met GAIL.
Yeah, and we
that
put
was,
in subject access request
2024.
2020. The subject access went in June 2022. They went round to Louise's house November 2022, and that was after that's all we did was a request for Louise's statements.
Because Martin Lloyd Evans has said in that documentary that all my interviews are recorded. They've got no tapes. There is nothing there. I've asked for them all.
Yours, I mean, I've been doing this job for a very long time. Your entire story stinks of a cover-up and a very extensive, widespread cover-up. Let me read you some more comments. Mark says, there is a scandal, the size and depth of which we've never seen before in Britain. And it is. I think this is extensive. And I think this could answer a lot of questions. You absolutely need to be part of an inquiry, both of you. Both of you. What can we do? What can we do?
Stand up. Do you know what I mean?
Can I just say something? You've got to look at things as well in context, you know, because if you look at things historically, we had the Welsh government that was set up in May 1999, which was a month before the murders. you've got to look at the Good Friday Agreement. That was in 1998/1999. Clydach murders was sat right in between that.
Ooh.
So I do understand about, such things such as, the Good Friday Agreement and what it did. However, it shouldn't be at the expense of expense of the Welsh people. We, being placed into social poverty, we're second-class citizens. The police force think that they're above the law, and if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could end up in a prison for a crime that you didn't commit.
Right, or being deemed a fantasist, and them threaten to take your children off you for speaking out. It's awful stuff.
She had electric shock treatment when she was 16.
Yeah.
It's absolutely appalling, and she can't get a passport.
I can't get a passport because my mother's been erased
From the system.
Absolutely awful. Yes, some people are not familiar with the case, some of our overseas viewers, so I will put a link in the description to a documentary of the case. But they are continuing to ask me in the comments, and that is, how can we help? What can we do?
I need everyone to make some noise so there is a grooming inquiry in Wales.
Right.
Because doing it everywhere else in the UK, they came down from Telford to search my house for my mum in Operation Chalice, and that was 2015, was it? 2011. Well, there you go. They came to my house in Craigavon Park to search for my mum and told me, these are all her aliases. And I said, well, can I have a copy of that? And he said, no.
And your mum's name was on the police database as well as a police informant as well.
Yeah.
So this goes high. This goes high, and we must make sure that nobody else gets to die off before this is actually tackled, right?
It's sorted because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of people that are still going through pain. The amount of people who committed suicide after the murders is ridiculous.
Right.
People who were bullied into thinking, they even tried to commit suicide, and they were told, you did it, you committed the murders. They wouldn't do it.
Right. It's mad. It's mad. Humphrey says in the comments they'll go to the ends of the earth to cover up. Sure, they will, because they're not just protecting the individuals, they're protecting the force and everything. They're protecting the conviction, aren't they? They're protecting so much. You're key to this, Louise. You need to be sure you're safe.
I don't care. They can tell me to shut up now. My children are grown. I know my children are safe now.
Yeah.
So I will follow them to the ends of the earth. Even if I die kicking and screaming, I don't care.
But do you know one of the things that is quite disgusting? Now, in 2025, which was only last year, Louise bravely, had sort of recovered her voice and wanted to speak out. So we went to Cinema and Co for Louise to have the opportunity to speak. There are some people who are involved in the case, as in the David Morris case, who were threatening to campaign outside Cinema and Co to shut Louise PUGH down. On that site, there were people who were calling her a liar and were talking about her abuse. So, a book had been published, which Louise didn't.
I didn't know about it.
As in she didn't have a chance to read. But her abuse was all there, black and white. And then there were abusive people in Swansea, calling her a liar, attention seeker.
I don't like attention anyway.
It's absolutely
I told you,
foul.
I keep to myself. The only person I speak to is GAIL and my friend Tigger in Liverpool.
Sounds like a good shout, frankly, because you have to keep your own circle really tight because you don't actually know who's doing what at this stage.
I don't even like doing this now. I will say, I hate myself. Do you know what I mean? Not you. I
don't take it personally. Listen, I think I have total admiration for the pair of you. I think what you're doing is phenomenal.
GAIL, I wouldn't be able to do nothing.
Well, let's see what we can do. So what I'll do after this is I'll create a little bit later. I will create a separate video for you. And what about if I send this to the Secretary of State for Wales? Should I do something like that?
Yeah, if you could.
They already know, though. Politicians were given this information 2020.
Right.
They know about it. They do nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But yes, please.
Yeah.
But I understand your frustration. I get it. I really do. It's like this to me absolutely reeks of a cover up. And
Yeah.
I don't want this to be one of those situations where in 20 years time, they're like, oh, Louise and Gail were right. No, let's find them right now if that's the
Say one
case.
thing a minute.
Yeah.
Don't mind. I went up to Worcester, right, to see about abuse. Because there was a place I remembered up there. So we went into Worcester and I spoke to a sergeant up there. And I said to him, I said, I have reported this to South Wales Police, but nothing gets done. And he said, do you know what? He said, they're the worst police force in the UK. He was amazing. I spoke to detectives. They took me to a centre up there where it was comfortable. I could talk in my own time. You know, they were really good with me. And they listened. And then they said, I'm sorry for what you've been through, whatever. But it felt like, I don't know, like a... You know, for once someone listened. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't explain it.
No, I get it. You were heard because you spent all your childhood being, you know, trafficked out and not heard. Your voice was not heard. Your voice was denied. All this wrong stuff was done against you. And the one person who was there for you was brutally slain.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think nobody gets it. I don't think, like, many people get it when they're calling me whatever. But Doris and Mandy were there for me all the time. And the kids, you know, they used to give me Mother's Day cards.
Right.
You're like, come to me. My stuff was in Mandy's house. You know, the police said to me, why are so many of your clothes in Mandy's? I'm looking at them going, I've already told you. How many more times have I got to tell you?
Right. Look at that, though, the way they tried to twist your relationship with Mandy.
Yeah,
so they were determined. They were determined to make it seem that the problem was all because of Mandy having, you know, other relationships, right?
Doris, I used to sit there with Doris. You know, we'd laugh. We'd listen to her favourite music. I'd play with the girls. It wasn't all about Mandy, you know?
No, I understand. I get it. I get it. We need justice for you and we need an inquiry. We will do whatever we can. Last word to you, ladies.
Okay, can I just say, with Louise, there is evidence within the subject actors which came from South Wales Police that puts Louise in that house. We've got neighbours who have come forward and have said that Louise was in that house. So unfortunately, we've got people who weren't around at that time who are making out that Louise PUGH is a liar, that she didn't live with Mandy. But the ones who were saying this were not even there.
It's just the usual stuff, right? It's the usual stuff, okay? And the person who was there and had some knowledge is written off, and she's written off because of what she knows and what has happened to her. And that's the bottom line, is it? That's the bottom line.
And also with, you know, Southport, what happened to those little girls in Southport? There's been national outrage. Yeah, we've got two little girls in Clydach. One was 8 and one was 10 who were murdered, and the focus was on Mandy's sexual orientation.
Right.
Foul, absolutely disgusting.
It doesn't matter what Mandy was. She was a good person.
Yeah. It doesn't matter her sexuality. That is all immaterial, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's immaterial.
She had a heart of gold and she'd do anything for anyone. Same with Doris.
But you know, regarding Louise with a passport, I mean, I'd love to take Louise, you know, she deserves a holiday just the same as everyone else. Right? We went down to a post office, you know, I ended up paying, you know, money so that it would be done properly by the post office. And Louise has been refused a UK passport, even though she was born here.
I can't have one.
Why?
I can't find my mother anywhere. And because my mum and dad weren't married, I've even said my dad's got a passport because I filled the forms in for him. But because his parents, the people who adopted him were married, he's allowed one. Because my mum and him weren't married, I'm not allowed.
Level of madness that you've been subjected to. Lady, I have to let you go, unfortunately. Okay. I hope you feel that you've been able to express enough this morning.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, not at all. I will, as soon as I can, I'll get this as a separate video. I have to go straight out after the show, unfortunately, so it will be later. But listen, take good care of yourself. Thank you for showing up today and just being phenomenal. Phenomenal. Take good care of yourself,
You
okay?
too. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
No worries.
Bye.
Louise Pugh and Dr. Gail John, everybody. And they need justice and they need an inquiry. Take good care of yourself.
You too.
Bye. Bye. And I think what's happened, people, I think that there is essentially a kind of no-go protocol when it comes to Louise, so that whatever she's attempting to do, she gets stopped and obstacles are created. I'm in no doubt about that whatsoever. If your mum is a police informant for both the IRA and South Wales Police, and she's also trafficking you out and it involves police officers, then they can do all manner of stuff that doesn't make any sense. So this is mad. This is absolutely mad. Thank you for your story, ladies. Stay strong, says Miss Dizzy rather. Thank you, Louise and Gail, says Mel's. Powerful stuff indeed. Right, there were some stories that I missed earlier because the whole morning has just got away from me, frankly. I wanted to briefly refer to Epsom. Could somebody please tell me what the actual took place there, right? So we were told that a young woman had left a nightclub and was then raped, I believe, by 4 asylum seekers outside the local church. And then there was all manner of stuff kicking off, and you had people like Tommy Robinson's sidekick, who was kind of like promoting the whole thing. There was a whole load of people down there creating chaos in Epsom. And then the police came out and said what happened didn't happen according to what has been said. No offence has occurred. Police closed the Epsom rape investigation. And so but the thing is, that's not the first time that that's happened, where we have heard that somebody was raped and then the police said no. It happened in Banbury in December last year as well. Very similar set of circumstances. But the problem is that it's getting very, very difficult to know now who is telling the truth and who isn't. And it's getting very, very difficult to know because we've got these, as I say, these plastic performative patriots. And I do not support them. They are not true patriots. They are little Hitlers, they are little bigots. The problem is you've got people like Elon Musk who have told these meatheads, we are the news. And so now they are making it, and for all the wrong reasons. And you have people like, for example, Lawrence Fox and an assortment of losers. They're desperate to be the UK version of Charlie Kirk. And even though Fox was once an actor, he is now reduced to sitting outside universities saying the N-word to prove that we have freedom of speech, or we don't. Either way. So even, you know, the thing is that I don't like the intervention of these people because I don't trust them. And I don't trust them because you have some of these people, one in particular, this guy who's trying to insert himself into everything. And he was like, yeah, we've got footage. Where's the footage then? Where is the footage? And this is the same guy that I saw a video, and he was talking to a fantasist to do with the Madeleine McCann case. So this is a guy that I know is prone to taking up information from pretty much anybody, right? And then you have people like David Atherton online, and he tweeted, Surrey police, I've just been sent images which purport to show the suspects from the gang rape in Epsom. Can I DM them to you for verification? No one is going to be shocked if true. Well, that's because you're a nasty person, David Atherton. And what is going to happen with all these people? If it's the truth that no rape took place, then a whole lot of chaos was created in Epsom for no reason, including them attempting to break into a woman's refuge because they believed it was housing asylum seekers. What is going on? Does anybody know? And yeah, Tommy Robinson's right-hand man, Danny Tomo Thomas, who was actually convicted of kidnap at knife point in 2016, he's there riling up people. I don't trust any of these people. And I certainly don't trust them to deliver the news. And then I don't trust the police either. So who do you end up trusting? Stollyfile says, Tiara's done it plenty of times. Who do you end up trusting, though? Because obviously we don't want a situation where somebody has been raped and it's being covered up by police, because we just heard something similar there. But by the same token, these people are just interested in likes and grifting. They're horrible people. They were doing some BS last week for St. George's Day. They were like, where are the St. George's Day flags and merchandise? Hey, listen, I was born in this country. We have never, ever had St. George's Day merchandise. Get a bloody grip. Get a bloody job. I'm sick of them. I am so sick of them. Modern day witch hunts, pizza. Discernment is key in the end days. Woohoo! Shook. Don't, you just made me go shaky. African Rose said, yes, the police now say the girl made these allegations after a bang on the head. Right, but look how quickly these vultures swooped in. I don't trust them. And now I know that the guy who was going on about having footage, I've already seen him where he's involved in another lie. Don't trust them. Don't trust them at all. So sick of it. I'm so over these people. And who else I'm over? Russell Brand. I've never known anyone to do a PR tour where they admit to exploiting a 16-year-old and while they're awaiting a trial for allegations of sex crimes. Russell Brand gave an interview with Megyn Kelly because he's busy promoting his book that he's put together with Tucker Carlson. And Megyn Kelly is proving herself more and more to be someone who will kiss ass if she finds the man attractive, which she clearly does with Russell Brand. Piers Morgan knows the law. He should know his recording with Brand is a potential contempt of court. It's interesting because at this point, Brand's team could argue that he can't get a fair trial because all this information is out there. The only thing it was Brand who put it out there. Is Russell Brand trying to throw his own criminal trial? It's as though they all want to throw the criminal trial. And he's obviously had to go to America. These are all MAGA people, right? Piers Morgan was still MAGA. And what Brand did is he's deliberately ingratiated himself with that kind of fake Christian crowd because he knew the people of England saw right through him. But the whole thing was excruciating, although I have to say, I hate Piers Morgan, but the scene where he said, have you got that Bible that you took into court to Russell Brand? And then he said, read me what you were reading in court. And then there was like 90 seconds where Russell Brand is trying to find the paragraphs that he read in court. Fake Christians. But yeah, very interesting promotional roundup taking place there. Almost certainly contempt of court. And these people know it. So the question is, why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And a big shout out to the people involved in trying to expose what has gone on with Operation Talla. And I see that there's some joy taking place in Scotland. Operation Talla. It was a UK-wide police directive where police officers were told to ignore complaints about the C-19 vaccine. Serious stuff. And we had Catherine McBean on a short while ago talking about it. She's been very much involved in it, and a number of very good people who've been involved in exposing this. Well, now actually the Scottish Police Authority is investing a complaint about Operation Talla. And this, I think, is going to get interesting because this is the first time, and it was in one of the Scottish mainstream media newspapers. So that's interesting because that's the first time I've seen it break out into the mainstream. But this is really serious because that order issued as the order that they're talking about now that is under scrutiny. It's under scrutiny in Scotland as a consequence of campaigner Leslie Roberts. And so that particular order that they're talking about in Scotland, it was set up by Police Scotland on January 29, 2020. We hadn't even got our feet tucked under the C-19 table and the order was already in place. And that was after a meeting chaired by then First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. So this goes deep and this goes high. No, I don't hate everyone, Maureen. I like lots of people in my comments. I like lots of decent people. I don't like people who I've known for a very long period of time who have got a history and they're trying to claim that they're something that they're not. That's what I don't like. I don't like bigots. Don't like that kind of Tommy Robinson crowd, not at all. I think they're very, very dangerous for democracy because they're not on behalf of the UK at all. We all know it's all about Israel first with that lot. So, and honestly, that's not about patriotism, is it? So anyway, going back to Operation Talla, this I think is a breakthrough. This could get very interesting because between March 2020 and May 2021, Police Scotland recorded 145,544 COVID-19 related encounters with members of the public. And that was about issuing fines, like, sitting on a park bench for too long and all that kind of stuff. But they didn't want to take anything to do with the COVID-19 vaccine. Well, it's now all coming on top, obviously. So we're going to see. And the statement that kind of set sail all of it, that created all of this, came from DCC Spears, who was then an assistant chief constable, and he gave a statement about the intimidation of staff and volunteers at vaccine stations across the UK after a number of incidents where members of the public had sought to intimidate and serve papers on them. So it was all about kind of, subterfuge and getting away from what was really happening. These people just wanted to report the fact that there seemed to be a problem with the C-19 jab, and yet they couldn't. But anyway, it's now breaking into the mainstream, which is fantastic. And it's about blooming time. Frankly, it's about blooming time. And I am thrilled with that. Yes, I am. I want to just briefly comment on Amy Winehouse. There was a court case last week, and the court case involved her father, Mitch, and two of her friends. And it's actually made my blood just run cold, the whole thing, because it really reminds me again of the betrayal of Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse, of course, singer-songwriter. She died on the 23rd of July, 2011. There was a High Court judgment last week where the judge dismissed the legal claim brought by Amy Winehouse's father, Mitch Winehouse, against two of Amy's close friends, Naomi Parry and Catriona Gourlay. And the ruling ended a long-standing dispute over personal belongings that had been sold at auction in the United States in 2021 and 2023. And Mitch Winehouse, acting as the administrator of his daughter's estate, accused the two women of deliberately concealing the sale and profiting from items that he claimed belonged to the estate. And the judge was not having it. And thank goodness for that, because Mitch Winehouse has not been great. He's not been great. These two women, Naomi Parry and Catriona Gourlay, were around Amy for years, decades even. She gifted them presents. She was known to be the person that once she wore an outfit, she didn't want to wear it again, so she'd just give it away to friends. And they had it. And Amy Winehouse was considered someone who was extraordinarily generous. She routinely gave clothing and items to friends because she did not like, as I say, wearing the same outfit twice. And Mitch Winehouse in court was found to be an unreliable witness whose memory was poor, and the judge remarked that he brought the case without verifying his claims for many of the items. There was no evidence of a conspiracy or deliberate concealment by the defendants, her friends. There was also an issue of the Limitation Act. The judges held that many of the claims were time barred under the Limitations Act 1980. And following the judgment, Naomi Parry released a statement via her legal team stating that her name had been cleared unequivocally and in full from unfounded allegations. And the judge commented that while Mitch Winehouse was understandably sensitive about his daughter's memory, he appeared equally focused on ensuring the family continued to benefit financially from her estate. And Catriona Gourlay was represented by Ted Loveday at Maitland's, and they put out a statement saying that, Catriona commented, "I am pleased and grateful that the court has dismissed all the claims made against me and Naomi. Today marks the end of a long and stressful ordeal, which has caused huge damage to me personally, professionally, and financially." And as I say, Amy was always known to be extremely generous. As one example, a man called Julien Jean-Baptiste revealed that she had paid for his urgent surgery in 2009 during her stay in St. Lucia. She gave £4,000 to a man she didn't know because he needed urgent surgery. And that was one example of Amy's generosity. And this court is also an example of Mitch Winehouse. Okay, Winehouse's last public appearance before her death took place at Camden's Roundhouse on the 20th of July, 2011. She made a surprise appearance on stage to support her goddaughter, Dionne Bromfield, who was singing Mama Said. She died 3 days later. She died in her Camden house. She had told her doctor, her GP, Dr. Christina Ramette, that she saw the night before her death. She said that she did not want to die. In a written statement, Winehouse's live-in security guard, Andrew Morris, spoke about the moment he realized she was dead. He said, "I was upset and shaken. She's like a sister to me." There were said to be no suspicious circumstances, although the first inquest was ruled illegal because the judge wasn't qualified. So they had a second inquest. The coroner's report was released in October 2011. It stated that Winehouse's blood alcohol counter was 416 milligrams at the time of her death, more than 5 times the legal drink drive limit. According to the coroner, the unintended consequence of so much drink was her sudden and unexpected death, as it reached a death by misadventure verdict. And I've always had a lot of problems with Amy Winehouse's parents. Even when she was alive, they did everything they could to center themselves. And they did a number of things that I was always uncomfortable with. As one example, when she was given a waxworks at Madame Tussauds, she didn't go to it, but her parents went to it. And her parents have always been, they've been subject to a great deal of criticism, actually, a huge amount of criticism. They've been accused of being exploitative and fame-seeking. Critics have suggested that Mitch used Amy to boost his own fame, his own profile. He was accused of creating his own documentaries, writing a book, Amy, My Daughter, and pursuing a biopic for personal gain. And there was one example when Amy was away, and she was away in the Caribbean, and Mitch arrived at the resort with a camera crew to film for a documentary called My Daughter Amy, later associated with saving Amy. And the whole thing was really uncomfortable because Amy was like, no, Dad, I don't want to speak to them. And she's gone there to get away from what was happening to her in London, all of the excesses, the addictions and everything. But he was like pushing his way in on a constant basis. So I'm not at all surprised that this man, who is doing very nicely from his daughter and his family, the Winehouse family, I'm not at all surprised that they even want to snatch back gifts that she's given to friends. And I'm so glad that the judge decided against him. So glad. Poor Amy Winehouse, she was not alive very long, 27 for goodness sake. Many people said she was in the 27 club, but she was so troubled. Why was she so anxious? Some people said it was because Mitch left when she was young and she hardly ever saw him. That was what Janice, her mother, said. But Mitch denied that, saying that's just not true. But that level of anxiety that she had does not happen for no reason. It doesn't. And either way, the Winehouses, including her mother and father, have continued, as I say, to do very nicely out of their daughter's legacy, while going after those who were there for their daughter and whom she wanted to share her wealth with. So I'm really glad with that judgment. That was really good news at last. A little bit of justice for Amy Winehouse, frankly. And hello to everyone who takes the time to leave comments on my videos. I do appreciate that. Hello to all our newbies, and including Jay Rimpey and Felix Joseph. Thank you for your comments. I very much appreciate that. I did the Alan Sugar and Karen Brady deep dive on Friday, and extraordinary message was left by Danielle saying, my son is related to Alan Sugar. His sister is my son's grandson. And goes on to say about how she gets no child support. I used to get £10 a week until my son's dad's passed away. Then the payment stopped. This is my son's great uncle. They are all so mean. I tried to verify that, almost impossible to, but I thought that was an interesting comment. And also regarding the Alan Sugar thing. And Mark found this interesting image. Mark, let me just bring it in. The most recent winner of The Apprentice is Karishma Vijay, founder of Jewels by Karishma. And look, interesting, this was the image that Mark found of her. That looks like the all-seeing eye, the eye of Horus to me. Her collection includes several variations of the evil eye necklace. So make of that what you will. Tanya, there's a live trial starting today. You can't be sharing that sort of information. That's known as contempt of court. And having once been under police investigation for 6 months for a potential thing, actually, it wasn't that at all. But you have to be incredibly careful. You can't talk about that sort of detail when a live trial is taking place. But in regards to what you've said, I sincerely hope that sort of information comes out if it's there to come out. That's what I will say. That is what I will say. So, yeah, that's Alan Sugar's latest recruit, and that is what she's manufacturing. And many of you have sent me images of the skies, too many for me to be even to begin to run. But the world is still laughing at people who dare to question chemtrails. I saw that Matt Letitia, lovely Matt Letitia, he put it to Grok being the AI tool that was developed by Elon Musk and his boys. And Matt put in information about chemtrails and then was essentially a laughing stock for about 2 days, with even Domino's Pizza UK joining in about Matt. Say, with an image of Matt saying, why are the boxes square when the pizza's are round? Makes you think. It's disgusting because these people are like completely ignoring the fact that our skies are toxic, but they want to laugh at an ex-footballer for asking questions about it. What's wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? And just quickly moving on, the Buckingham Palace clip, right? And that is that whole idea of the guy escaping. And I said it was it was said to be part of a US story. Well, I will put the link in the description again because I was sent the link which showed that it was a promo for a US story. Now, I am absolutely aware that some people still don't believe it, and that's fine, but I will put the link in again so you will see where the source of it is said to have come from. Okay. Donators, thank you as ever, to Helen O'Carroll, to Hound Dog Shop, to Dinesh Naru, to Merv Whitney, to Linda Young, to Peter Birch. Thank you on the super chat to James McCartney, to Elaine Edgar, to Shannon McGranahan, to Lorraine Bernadette Hoyle. And this morning, thank you, Frederick. Thank you so much, Fred Withrow. Thank you to Simon, not to be spent in McDonald's. And thank you, Mark. Another great show. Harrowing to hear about the corruption, lack of empathy and compassion. Indeed, it is harrowing indeed. And thank you always to all of you. And I want to end on this, and that is when the universe talks to you. So I shared this experience with my patrons, and then something happened and it told me to click the X, and I clicked it and it seemed to delete the post. So patrons, you may or may not have seen this. I think some of you did because there were comments left on it, but I couldn't even see the comments. So look, I'm going to kind of repeat it. And that is, as people know, I'm renovating our garden, right? But on Friday, I started to dig out a pond. Really excited about it. All my own design. Anyway, I suddenly thought of a comment that I had made on Wake Up that morning about my mum. And the minute that I had that thought, I heard this light bang and something appeared to have got into a container that I was using to dig out the pond, right? And I was like, what the hell just happened? Next thing I know, a robin, which I always associate with my mum, and I've said on Wake Up on more than one occasion that I do, flies up in the air, lands on some bricks, then it realizes I've spotted it, and it flies and lands on more bricks. Then it does it, well, what appears to be some kind of little dance. Then it hops onto a path that I'm building, and we're watching each other all the time. And I'm going to show you the video. There's the robin. It's just flown in now.
Oh my God, really?
And now I've just realised it. Can you see it?
Robin. Hello. Hello.
So when I say hello, when I go Robin, it looks at me. And then when I go hello, it ducks its head down again. I'm just going to show you that again. I was so thrilled about this, by the way.
Oh my God, really? Thank you. Robin. Hello.
I love robins too. They're very special. Anyway, the only reason that it carried on moving on was because then our dog started to come back through the arch. But it really, I do genuinely believe that was a message. I mean, no doubt about that whatsoever. I caught eye contact with the robin. I've repeatedly said whenever I see a robin, I think of my mum. So I'm in no doubt whatsoever that was the universe talking to me. And woe betide anybody who tries to disabuse me of that notion, right? But it made me very happy and feeling all at one with this dear grand universe of ours. And I just thought that, sometimes we ignore the little signs. Like I could have just ignored that. But when I heard that little kind of like thud on the kind of pail, I was like, wait, what is that? And then I was really in tune with that moment. Like everything that was happening, I felt very much caught up in it. I felt like I was in a bubble with just me and the robin. And I mean, I do notice lots of patterns and lots of synchronicities. I see number patterns. I'm very intuitive. I'm very aware of my own inner knowing. I'm very aware of like symbolisms and symbolic encounters. But I think oftentimes when we're not present, you know, when we're sometimes like kind of away with the fairies, as they say, we miss these signs. But I think these signs are happening all the time on a constant basis. And I think one of the things that I certainly know I need to do and is remind myself that these things are very real. They're as real as somebody walking up to me in the street, a robin coming down in my garden and appearing to have some kind of communication with me when a robin holds so much symbolism for me is a message. It is absolutely a message. And it made me think, what is the message here? And the message is that the universe for me is always listening. The universe is always in tune with me. But the problem is I'm not always in tune with the universe. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that, is that oftentimes we're just not. Mark says, when robins appear, loved ones are near. I didn't know that. Is that actually an expression? Yeah, Glennis, I felt like it was a message. Jean says, wee robin landed on my windowsill. So a lot of it really interesting. Do you know, it's I love it because we've got some really upset trolls in the comments. I'm pretty certain they're upset because of what I've had to say about Epsom and everything. And I love upsetting you people. I love upsetting you people. You're the worst of us. But that robin and me and my message was the best of us. It's the best of us. It's being so in tune with the universe and what it represents. And I just thought, you know what? When the universe talks to you, often appears as synchronicities, right? Meaningful coincidences, repetitive numbers, intuitive nudges that guide you. And they validate you and they wake you up, whether you want it or not, whether that is you seeing a pattern in 1111 or whatever it is. And so that was what I saw and I loved it. And the quote that I want to end on is, when the universe speaks, you just have to learn to listen. And I listened on Friday and I loved it. And I just thought, this is great. This is really good stuff. And that's all my patrons and all the people who donate and make Wake Up what it is. And I appreciate you. Thank you, Merv. Glennis, I absolutely love robins. Always have. Mr. Tilly Dog, Mother Nature. Yes, absolutely. Right. I'm out of here. I have a very, very busy day ahead of me. I will be back on Friday as per. Thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate it. And that's whether you're in favor of me or not. It all helps the algorithm. So I appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate that. Thank you, Health Freedom UK. See y'all. London Lady is really enjoying this Robin episode. Take good care of yourself, everybody. Ignore the trolls in the comments. We all know that they're unemployed oiks for the most part, who spend rather a lot of their day with one hand on their computer keyboard and the other down their trousers. Take good care of yourself, you wonderful people. And really, Mel's interesting. Thank you, Drum. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Senton. I will see you Friday, everybody. Take excellent care of yourself. Have a brilliant, brilliant day. Lots of love to you.